Blessed woman, come to me, woman of the fires, woman of poetry. Blessed woman, come to me, woman of healing, woman of skillful means. My name is Erin Suniva, and this is the second video for Ireland's Ascendants program, connecting people to Ireland and her truth and beauty and all of her many mysteries. Today we're joined by Katie Blackwell, who is an herbalist and healer. She's known as a Banfasa, which in Celtic basically translates to a wise woman. She's been on her healing path for 20 years, and she teaches the traditional Celtic ways. Welcome, Katie. Thank you for being with us.
Thanks, Erin, and hello, Ireland's Ascendants.
So I'm really excited to have this conversation with you, and I appreciate you letting me record our conversations because we've gone on for almost hours and hours before, and it's always fascinating talking with you and really connecting to the heart of Ireland, the mystical heart, you know, and all of the old energies that you carry with you, the teachings that you carry with you. So today we're going to talk about Bridgid and her many faces. She's known as the triple goddess, or seen as the triple goddess. We're in her time right now, in the springtime, the coming of spring, and her Saints feast was just here at Imbolc. We can talk about the many layers of that. And I also want to talk about the sacred wells that are all dedicated to her and the relationship to fire and water in Ireland. So where shall we start? Can we start with old Bridgid?
Yeah.
So tell me about her.
So Bridgid, the goddess, is known as the fiery arrow, and she's the goddess of poetry, of smithcraft and healing. And the legend is that she was the daughter of the Dagda, and Dagda is the good god from the Tuatha Dé Danann. So Dagda is like kind of the father god, and he was a very good god and a very good king, and he served and ruled Ireland very well, and the people were very happy with him. So Bridgid was his daughter, and she is supposed to bring inspiration and hope, and particularly after the winter. So it's like the renewal of spring, and we celebrate her at Imbolc, which is, it means in the belly, Imbolc. And it's to do with the rebirth of the goddess from the dark part of the year into the springtime. And Bridgid brought the spring. She's represented by the snowdrops that begin to push up out of the earth after the long winter. And she brings inspiration and hope again, and renewal. So as I said, she was renowned for healing, for the healing arts, for midwifery, for looking after the animals, for inspiring poets and poetry, and all of her healing arts that she had. So the Tuatha Dé Danann came to Ireland, and they were broken down into three classes of people. So the Tuatha were the lords and the kings, and then the Dé were the priests, and then the Danann were the poets. So Bridgid was the goddess that would inspire the bards and the poets. And again, so she's representing the spring aspect of the goddess and the fiery aspect. We call her the fiery arrow. She's depicted with red hair. She's, depicted with the whole aspect of the renewal of springtime, and again, hope and inspiration. And in later years then, she became, as the Christian influence came in, they wanted to Christianize this goddess who was, the people looked to her at all times for all forms of healing. She was like a mother goddess to them. And she's quite likened at times to the way Mary is likened in other cultures. And I mean, there's stories and folklore about, Bridget and Mary being friends. But obviously they were, it's different time eras, but it's the crossover of, of the feminine influence. So then as the Christian influence came in, she was turned into a saint, and she was sort of stripped away of her mothering qualities. She was seen as the virginal aspect. She became, she was a nun. She didn't marry anybody. She became a saint, and she was born in the Saint Bridget woman was born in Dundalk, in a place called Fogart, where there's a shrine to her, right, and a sacred well.
Can I say that, like, this will be, I believe, on our second day of the Ireland's Ascendants tour, we'll be going to this spot, to her birthplace.
Yeah. So this is where she was raised by her father, who was a blacksmith. Again, the link there in the story of Bridget being linked in with the smith aspect, the magical aspect of fire, working with fire energy, which is what the smith was in our traditions. He was, a master of the fire. So she was the daughter of the smith, and from a very young age she was very giving of herself and her time for healing, and anything she had she gave away to look after others. And that humanitarian side of Bridget, that looking after and caring for her people, was there in the stories. And from there, there about the pilgrimage then, right through the land. And basically her monastery was set up in Kildare, in the Midlands, which is the place where they have the eternal flame, supported by, the high priestesses or the nuns.
And so this line that you're, just for our audience's sake, this line that you're referring to, the pilgrimage, is this straight line that goes from Fogart down through many old mounds, including Tara, goes straight through down to the Curragh, where she set up her monastery.
That's it. And like, a lot of people can sort of link that into a ley line, that is an energetic line running through the land, along that energy line where she has sort of guarded her sacred flame, the sacred energy of the feminine that's guarded by the feminine. And there's lots of stories about, that there is these nuns guarding this eternal sacred flame, and if any man came near it, they would be cursed, or they would fall ill or die. So this was the sacred feminine. Women only, and being protected, and and it's still very much honoured. And St. Bridget is a big patron saint in Ireland. People still pray to her. They would still very much do old traditional things on the eve of Imbolc, for Bridget, making crosses and hanging out bits of cloth and asking Bridget to bless them. And there's still a deep history here and a deep link into that knowing of looking for that divine feminine mother aspect for healing in our society, even to this modern day. Even though she has been turned from goddess to saint, it's still there. The link is still there. And we turn to Bridget as sort of the mother aspect of the goddess, and she combines a lot of the goddess. She combines the springtime aspect of the maiden, but also the mothering aspect with being the goddess of midwifery and of domesticated animals and of home and hearth. She's the goddess of the home and the hearth, the central place of the home where, the women would be doing a lot of work and guarding the fire and all of that goes with that. Mm-hmm. So, she's still very much alive in Ireland.
I'm going to grab my Bridgid's crosses.
Yeah.
So these reeds were gathered in Donegal.
Yes.
And when I saw your triple, I was challenged to turn one of my 4 into a 3. Which it looks a little bit silly now.
No,
but there was something about it when I maneuvered things, because it's dry and brittle now and it's not malleable really. But when I did that, I could feel an energetic shift coming from it. That it definitely had a different energy than this one did.
Yeah, and that triple aspect of the reeds there, it was a lot more ancient than the 4-armed cross. Well before, like, the 4-armed cross came in again to signify Christianity.
Right.
And just as the 4-leafed clover was used to, move from the 3-leafed clover of the Maiden Mother Crone into the 4-leafed cross, but also changing from Maiden Mother Crone to, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. So it was the crossover time when the Christian influence started having more, and we moved from a 3, the creative, magical aspect, into a 4 crossroads, very linear thinking.
Mm-hmm.
So the triple aspect was made by housewives, again, to honor Bridget, made from reeds, dried and normally hung over the hearth of the home to protect the home from fire that would go out of control and destroy the home. And again, that was an honor to Bridget. And as she was Christianized and became the saint, she used the reeds to influence and bring in the Christianity aspect and tell people the story of the cross and Jesus. And then we started making the 4-armed cross.
Right. And that is what you see everywhere. At every site are, a lot of the sites that are dedicated to her, there's some sort of semblance of the 4-edged cross. And the wells are, so you spoke of Kildare. In Kildare, there is a well. There's also a spring there. And it feels like, and what people have told me, like, the spring is the real well, it's like, that's the real sacred aspect of the water coming up out of the ground. Like, this is a power point, and before this well was ever there, this spring was always there. And that to me feels like this eternal, the eternal emotional fulfillment that comes through the connection, to the land, to the water, and to the triple goddess. So let's talk about the wells. They're everywhere. They're everywhere. Is it that I mean, this is a very new thing to me. As far as wells that I know, in colonial America, wells are dug. You have to dig deep into the earth to get to the water table. But in Ireland, the water table is very high. And but there are wells everywhere, just spouting out of maybe not just anywhere. They're important places that they come out of the ground, like the Shannon pot, you know, starts as a well and as a trickle and turns into a river. You know, and one of the most important rivers in Ireland. So talk to me about the water and the wells.
Yeah, I mean, water is a huge part of our landscape. It's a huge part of our country. You know, that's why Ireland is always seen as feminine, because of the water. It's soft, it's flowing. From it, life bursts forth, you know. And water was sacred. And as you said, like from this little bubble of water can form these massive streams and rivers. And in these rivers, it's teeming with life and food and water to nourish us, you know. So it was seen as a gift. It's a gift, and it was healing as well. They were all associated with the energy of the goddess and the feminine. And in this feminine aspect, we were being given life, we were being given food, and we were being given healing from the goddess and from the feminine. So these wells, like some of them, you know, they would go forward and they would take the sacred water and honor the goddess and take it for healing in many different forms. And they found that when they did this, that they were being healed. And they would create little shrines around this area and like maybe mark it with some stones, and then, you know, mark it out a bit further. And they have become shrines over centuries and centuries of going to these places to honor the feminine, to honor the goddess, to honor the healing waters of Ireland, the sacred energy that lies within the land, you know, and to take pilgrimage for it. I mean, it doesn't matter whether you're interested in the ancient ways or not. Even as part of the Catholic Church, there is a huge acknowledgement of holy wells, you know, that the church has kind of colonized on. And this is the problem with the Celtic traditions and the pagan traditions that predated Christianity. They were so strong in our culture and in our minds and in our hearts that it was very difficult to get us to transfer over to Christianity. So they had to build a bridge, and they did this with saying, you know, well, these are holy wells now to a saint, and we're going to make your goddess a saint, you know, and we're going to show you that it's very similar. Like, you have the tree, you know, you have the maiden mother crone, we've got the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. And, you know, even in terms of, you know, mass, you know, and the honoring and the things, the ceremony that goes with mass and the ritual part of mass, and, you know, the blood and the wine and the bread and the water, and, you know, the incense and the candles, you know, it was something that they could easily walk across the bridge to, you know. And they couldn't do that unless it was because their culture was so strong and their connection with their gods and goddesses was so strong that they were not going to just drop them, you know, for this one, just one god, right. You know, right. So they had to,
I'm so grateful. Thank you for fighting so hard and staying so connected. Yeah.
So because they had been praying and this culture had been established for so long, and the history was so established, and their culture was so established, and the healing that they received from honoring these gods and goddesses was so established, that they weren't going to let it go. So they had to, you know, they had to build a bridge. And the holy wells now are the bridge from the ancient springs that were honored to, you know, oh, here the church has made it and it's associated with a saint now, and it's still holy, you know, if you pray to the saint, and, you know, it's holy.
Well, there's that aspect where a lot of them have been changed over to be St. Patrick's wells. Many of them renamed as St. Patrick, even if they were St. Bridgid's before.
Yeah.
You know, so that whole like blanketing of Christianity and just taking all of it something that I have been forgiving for a really, for a long time, and I'm sure it's a challenge for you since you're immersed in it as well. Someone who's carrying the old ways and still having to deal with the power of the colonization of the Christian church.
Yeah.
And one of the ways that you're doing that, and I meant to introduce your work at the beginning, but this is a perfect time. So you do this work that you call Antinacri. Hopefully I said.
Yeah.
And this is the heart fire, the sacred heart fire medicine of the ancient ones. To connect and heal through the fire of our true hearts will heal us and in turn heal our reality. It is time to remember the medicine of our native land. The medicine of our Celtic ancestors. The Celtic medicine wheel is a complete training module to help integrate and practice the way of our ancestors, the way of the heart fire. Can you tell me more about this beautiful work that you do, please?
Yeah. So I have done a lot of training in different healing modules over the years, and it's always come back to me that, we have our own medicine, we have our own connections, and it hasn't been forgotten. A lot of the time, people think as an Irish culture, we don't have much of a remembering of the ancient ways, but it has been preserved through our mythology, through our stories. And even if you dig deep, you will find that, through the stories of even modern saints, if you unearth this, you will see the stories and the ways of our ancestors, because that was the way they preserved it. We have a huge oral tradition in Ireland where which is wonderful, and it has helped preserve a good bit through word of mouth and storytelling, but it was also a little bit of our downfall because we didn't get to write down a lot of our history, and it was written down by people from outside of our culture who were outside observers. So a lot of it was lost, but it is still there, and it's not just there in the stories and the mythology. It's there in the land. It's there in the connecting with nature, in sitting in the feminine, in listening, in using your intuition. And this medicine wheel that I'm teaching is really about that, and it's about reconnecting and listening to the songs in our land, the words in our land, songs in our trees, the songs in our animals, and the songs still of the gods and goddesses who are still there. If you can hear, and if you can slow down, and if you can listen, and if you can open your heart, you will receive it. And this is what the Celtic medicine wheel is about. It's about reconnecting with all of that, with everything that we believe has been lost, and it's not lost. So it is our way of connecting with the energies in Ireland, and it is coming from a place of complete open-heartedness, with no agenda, with humility and openness, and the only thing that we are willing to do is to listen, and to see what comes of that. And this is what the Antinacri is all about. It's about helping us to reconnect with those ancient myths through the ancient stories, the ancient gods and goddesses, our trees, our native plant medicine that is all around us, going out, communing with it, working with it energetically, working with it in ceremony, working with it in an honorable way, and helping it heal us so that we can create space for others to sit in that space and for them to heal themselves as well.
Yeah. Beautiful. So powerful. And you're so humble. It's a really big thing to do. And I can imagine that part of not having an agenda, that part of really being vacant and available and free of preconceptions of what you believe something to be, what you've been told or what you've been taught about this is what this is, You know, even if like this is an oak tree, and you sit with that oak tree and it says, my name is not Oak, it's such and such, you know, like that's a hard place to be so free and available to listen and tune in to. So thank you for holding that space.
Thank you.
Yeah. So in what you know in these traditions and what you've learned, there's an interesting relationship between water and between fire, and they're very different. Mm-hmm. Can you speak to that, please?
Yeah. From looking into the past and about the Celtic people, you know, everything around their society was like 3 was very sacred to them. 3, the number 3, and the Trinity and everything that went with that. So, you know, in their society, it would have been a lot more of the feminine, and we would have had the maiden, mother, crone aspect of the goddess, you know, and but we would have also had sort of what we would have worshipped around us, which was the 3 realms, and the 3 realms were earth, sea, and sky. And that is because as a land, Ireland is an island, and that is what is around it. You know, it is earth and is surrounded by sea and sky. So fire wasn't really a huge aspect of our landscape, our temperature, or in our everyday lives, other than that we honored fire as something sacred that, you know, could keep us warm, cook our food. Mostly what we worshipped and honored was the earth, sea, sky aspect, you know. So yeah, it's different again then as other traditions come in, and we add in fire, you know, into the directions of, you know, earth, air, fire, and water. A lot of that would have come later, you know, and it is important now, but saying in ancient times, the people were worshipping what was around them, and what was around them was earth, sea, and sky, you know. So fire was seen as, you know, magical and honored. It wasn't a huge part of their culture. But that being said, I mean, they were known as a very fiery people, you know.
Yeah, that's
So maybe
a powerful contrast.
Yeah, so maybe the fire is within them, within their hearts, and that's what we're trying to bring out again, you know, and bring the fire back into the land, you know.
Mm-hmm. Well, and it's interesting too that Bridgid is represented by fire and water, you know, so powerfully. When I look at Bridgid, all I think is fire. You know, I know her, you know, initially mostly as the hearth. When I think about my home and blessing my home and the center of the home, I was looking back at I don't know if it was like a Facebook memory or something, but the center of the woman is the womb. And the center of the home is the hearth. And the woman is the one who keeps the hearth. And therefore, the womb is the center of the home.
I love it.
You know, like it's all related. The hearth is the womb of the home, or, you know, but just the creative cauldron, really. And, you know, how, you know, so it's interesting to me that the wells are also dedicated to her, and that alchemical dance between fire and water is really powerful. I understand, you know, I can appreciate the balance of coming into that sort of, you know, directional, 4 corners, elemental way of changing, but I can certainly understand that everything in the ancient days was so immediate and so present, and the earth, sea, and sky were present constantly, you know, and fire is present when you need it. You know, yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
it makes perfect sense. Well, Katie, thank you so much for hanging out with me, having this conversation. There's so much to cover, and I really am grateful that we got to spend some time with Bridgid here to talk about her and honor her. And we hopefully will have time for another interview with you before we come out, talking more about the herbs of Ireland, the healing herbs of Ireland, and how to connect with them wherever you are, because some of them are very common. And we'll see what else, but you will also be joining us in the beginning of our tour in June, and I'm so grateful to be able to work with you.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to meeting you and all of the Ascendants. So yeah, it would be great. And thanks, Erin. Thanks for taking the time to talk to me.
Yeah, thank you.